tonight didn't bring us the result that we had hoped for, this journey, the fight for you, it was worth it. I will continue to fight for the Commonwealth of Kentucky each and every day.
Allison Lundergan Grimes basically has to say in a very nice manner, we didn't win. You win by being with us. Ed Berliner along with J.D. Hayworth, the entire crew, thanks for joining us. Ms. Grimes had to concede after being pummeled by Mitch McConnell in Kentucky by 14% of the vote.
And as we take a look at that, whenever someone is a party leader in the United States Senate, they can call on considerable resources as the incumbent. Despite Bill and Hillary Clinton going into the bluegrass state, despite the excitement about Allison Grimes, despite the fact that I believe she remains in office as the Secretary of State, the numbers are coming in. It is a decisive win for the Senate Republican leader.
All right, now we pointed out that Republicans are halfway there, 3 out of 6 votes right now. What we've heard about Kentucky and a whole lot more. Let's catch up with Dick Morris live in Philadelphia right now to bring us up to speed on what he is seeing with regard to a lot of the numbers. Dick?
Well, the issue, of course, is North Carolina and New Hampshire. Both are states where, which if we're going to win 10 seats, we've got to win those states. And while the Democrat jumped out to an early lead, we've been closing it fairly consistently. In North Carolina, with 43% of the vote in, we were down by 7. But with 53% of the vote in, we're down by 4, which is pretty good progress. In New Hampshire, with 19% of the vote in, the Republicans were down by 8. But with 29% of the vote in, they're down by 6. You got to watch those states as that comes in and see if we're able to tighten them up and open up a lead. I'm still very, very influenced by the results in Kentucky, not because Kentucky matters in this thing, but because it's the only state where we have anywhere close to 100% of the vote and can look at it and see how the Republicans are doing relative to their polling. One other thought I just want to mention, Kansas is going to be a crucial state because we now know that Kentucky and Georgia, which will not be Democratic takeaways of Republican seats, but Kansas could be, with this Democrat masquerading as an independent. Greg Orman is taking on Pat Roberts. Well, we only have 10% of the vote in, but Roberts is 2 ahead. We need to, of course, watch that and see what goes on, but so far, at least, that's not discouraging.
And I want to go back to New Hampshire for just a second, Dick. The news broke today about Jeanne Shaheen and correspondence about the IRS targeting conservative groups. Was that too late to make a difference, or were there some late deciders who might come over to Scott Brown based on that revelation?
No, I think it was not too late. We have to remember this was not a smear that was dumped on Election Day. The plaintiff in that litigation had been looking for that document for like 6 months, and he finally got it today and released it as soon as he got it. It goes to the basic point, which is the whole focus that led to the IRS investigation of the Tea Party came from the Democrats in the Senate. Chuck Schumer, Jeanine Sheehan, and a bunch of others pounded the IRS and said, we want you to nullify the Citizens United decision by your audits and your administrative action. And that's really what you're looking at there.
All right, Dick Morris, thanks so much for joining us. We just saw the numbers right there, 54% for Sheehan, 46% for Scott Brown at this moment. Right now, let's go ahead and turn to Washington, D.C. political media consultant Hank Sheinkopf. He is live in our New York studios right now. Hank, we got a couple of minutes before we take a break here. What's your take on what we've seen thus far this evening?
If I were a Democrat, I would be very worried about non-college graduate, blue-collar people voting for Republicans. This is a return to the Reagan Democrats, probably getting rid of the Democrat at the end of their names. It's very serious for Democrats because their constituency is being taken from them as we speak.
Well, Hank, as you mentioned that, almost sounds like Rick Santorum, because Santorum has been talking about blue-collar conservatives. He's written a book about that. Based on tonight's results, will that give encouragement to Rick Santorum to mount another race for the Republican nomination in 2016?
I think that's a very good analysis and a very good question. Would I, if I were Rick Santorum, or would you if you were Rick Santorum, based upon the outcome tonight, win, lose, or draw, what's occurring in this country, take the shot? He's got nothing to lose. Depends what happens in Pennsylvania and states like that that are very much like the people that Santorum is talking about and the people without whom you cannot win a presidential election or win primaries.
Hank, are you seeing anything this evening that's surprising you?
Surprising me is the closest of the race in New Hampshire is the defeat of the Democrat for governor apparently in Massachusetts. That's quite extraordinary. And Ed Gillespie, an extraordinary campaign. I've always had a tremendous regard for candidates, not for consultants. Anybody who does what you all have done is pretty extraordinary, Mr. Hayworth. And that being said, he's to be congratulated for what is an extraordinary run. And he may yet win this thing tonight.
All right, Hank Sheinkopf.
Also,
thanks so
Florida
much.
is quite
Please, go
interesting.
ahead. Florida as well. You wanted to.
Florida is quite interesting to me.
Yeah, it always is.
Florida because Florida is a bellwether for what presidential campaigns will look like, and when you get to general elections. And Rick Scott should have been beaten if you looked at the polls, and that's apparently not going to be the way it's going to turn out.
Right now, we're looking at about a 3% lead for Governor Scott, with a number of the precincts reporting. We'll get to those numbers as well. Hank, thanks so much for joining us. We'll catch up with you later on this evening.
Thank you so much.
You know, it's interesting. We mentioned Ed Gillespie, and it's interesting about Ed as a former staffer, then Republican National Committee chair, always a bit unorthodox. When the Democrats were having a huge presidential debate back in 2004, Ed asked me to join him as a gate crasher, as a debate party crasher. We did so to the considerable non-delight of then Democrat National Committee Chairman, our friend who is now the governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe. Could you imagine McAuliffe as governor, or maybe Ed as the senator?
And we're right back after this.
The Midterms, You Decide 2014 will be back in just a moment.